Welcome to another episode of 10xMarketer podcast. Today, I'm joined by Rafael Flores. He's the CEO and founder of Edgehog Productions, a media and podcast production agency. Flores comes with a rich background in SaaS marketing, including his role as a head of digital marketing or a global marketing at a leading tech company. Rafael brings refreshingly authentic perspective on B2B SaaS product marketing. In this episode, we'll cut through all the corporate jargons and explore the real fundamentals of SaaS marketing success, from product led growth strategies to truth about the thought leadership. Often, thought leadership is the most misunderstood term, according to me. Rafael shared some candid insights on what actually drive results. It's not always what the LinkedIn crowd would love to have you believe. Whether you are a SaaS founder just beginning your marketing journey or somebody who is already established and looking to scale, this conversation offers some practical wisdom on building genuine connections with your audience and creating a marketing strategy that truly serves your customer. Before we get into the episode, can I request you just one thing? Can you subscribe to 10x Marketer podcast wherever you're listening from? We are available on Spotify, we are available on Apple Podcast, and we are also available on YouTube channel. So where you're listening from, make sure you subscribe so that you get an update about some exciting future episodes that we are planning. Now, let's jump into the episode and listen to what Flores has to share with us.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure to be here. You come really highly recommended, and I've seen you all over LinkedIn, so it's a pleasure. So my name's Rafael. I am originally from a small city in this place called El Paso, Texas. My family is originally from Mexico. They came here somewhere around when I was like in second grade. Went to college, lived abroad for a couple of years, and then I started working as a marketing manager overseas when I was getting my master's degree, and it was just to pay the bills. It wasn't anything I was considering to do as a career. But you know how these things go, right? You plan one thing, and something comes your way and kind of steers you in a different direction. Um, and so I did. I started doing marketing there. Came back to the states, and then I started working in a SaaS technology company for some time. Left there. Worked for a publication company for uh, I would say no more than 6 months, and then they asked me to go back to the SaaS company. So I was there for a total of almost 3 to 4 years. I worked my way up to head of global marketing, and then I decided to start my own business. So now I'm the CEO and founder of Edgehog AI. We're not an AI company. We're actually rebranding the name to Edgehog Productions, which is we are a media and podcast production agency. And yeah, so I'm happy to be here and happy to hopefully be able to provide some value to you and to your audience today.
Great. So we are interested in listening your experience on B2B SaaS software products and specifically the performance marketing aspect that you've been taking on. Uh, for a startup, what are the starting points when they are getting into the performance marketing for a SaaS product?
Okay. I mean, it's gonna depend on the stage of the startup, right? I mean, how much, whether they just got funding, you know, the amount of funding. Obviously, gonna depend a lot on the KPIs. It's gonna depend a lot on the alignment between the marketing and the overall business strategy, also on the sales perspective as well. So I would say that for a very early stage startup, the first thing that you want to do is to use your marketing budget to be able to find that product market fit. And again, I'm talking very early stage, right? Because at that point, the marketing becomes a vehicle for you to do a lot of experiments to make sure that you're developing the right thing. Take those learnings, go back and make sure that you make the adjustments that you need to make to the product so that then you can go and actually be able to start converting your ideal customer, right? But again, that's at a very early stage. This company that I worked on, they were already a little bit more advanced in their growth trajectory. I would say they were probably maybe series A or B, one of those two. So they were about, maybe revenue was anywhere between maybe $1 and $5 million. And so at that point, you obviously want to be able to focus on, again, obviously the objective of the business, and how does that objective tie into to marketing? What percentage of the clients are coming from sales? What percentage are coming from marketing? Because at that particular point, they already knew who their ideal target audience was. They already knew, they had a track record of sales, right? So at that point, the first decision you have to make is to be able to decide what where do I want to go? Where do I want to allocate my resources? Do I want to allocate my resources in like paid advertisement? Do I have the budget for paid advertisement? Or do I want to take it more from an organic perspective of leveraging the traffic on my website and be very, very heavy on like, growth hacking tactics like email marketing, SEO, and being able to capture those leads and nurture them into a paying client. So again, it all really is going to depend case by case. Um, what I would say is that always is just to always make sure that the overall business strategy and the objectives are going to be able to be supported by the marketing and vice versa. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it very much does. But the second follow up question is, one is, there is, when we talk about SaaS companies, I also worked with
Hmm.
a lot of SaaS companies earlier as an agency and also as an employee. One of the conflict that they always have is the sales team is like, one expectation is that you bring the traffic, you convert them directly on the website. Sales team is also looking for leads to convert the enterprise customers. Then
Sure.
there is no clear description of what is required from a performance marketing campaign versus
Hmm.
what is required by the sales team. So most often you see the performance marketing team is expected to close the sale directly on the website, and they more
Sure.
or less become the end to end sales team rather than just performance marketing team. So the focus on branding part is lost often. That's what I feel when it comes to the SaaS companies. More focus is put on revenue. So how do you find a right alignment? How do you really position your marketing effort within the company and with the management? If you are the management, then how do you align yourself with the objective of your brand? One is that. Second is, how do you position the performance marketing effort into the overall strategy?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question, and that is indeed something that I've seen myself. But I think that there's no reason why branding. Let me just answer that part first, and we can get into the alignment part. Uh, Branding is something that goes beyond just what you're spending from an awareness perspective. Branding is something that happens at every single level of the business. What I mean by that is that sales has an aspect of branding. The internal culture and the mission and the vision and the values of an organization have also something to do with branding. So you really can't separate branding and the brand and what the organization is supposed to stand for. Really can't separate it from the actual business itself, whether it's HR, sales, et cetera, right? So for taking it from that point of view, the brand actually has a much more fundamental role in the success of a business outside of just it being recognized, because you have to ask yourself what makes it recognizable. And so there is a philosophy that goes into building a brand, from not just about the why of the business, but also again those philosophical principles and values that you want to be able to be communicated at a almost subconscious and emotional level in the people that engage with it, right? And so the people that engage with it could be your employees, it could be your salespeople engaging with other individuals, or it could be an advertisement that you've done from on Google or any sort of social media platform. And so that again, that I just want to make sure that that distinction is made, right? Because you can't, brand is a guide of behavior as much as it is anything else. It's a reflection of what the company is and what it believes in, right? With whatever touch point anybody's going to have with the organization. Now, from an alignment perspective, the best way to align sales and marketing is to not think of them as two separate entities, but rather two sides of the same coin. In other words, the objectives that both sales and marketing have should be the same. And you'll say, well, obviously marketing can't be responsible for closing clients. Well, yes and no, right? Because uh, there's a lot of different components that go into that. So, for example, are you bringing in the right client? Are you collaborating enough with maybe people on the customer success side to really understand what are the pain points that the client is encountering. What type of clients are more likely to stay with your organization? How are they using the product? Right? How long are they engaging with software? And so you take all of those learnings and then you apply them into your marketing copy, because also what you want to do is you want to be able to turn your marketing into a premier expert, not just in the software, but also in the industry that they're in, so that they can actually create good authoritative content. And so when you marry those goals, it doesn't become two separate entities trying to, one of them is like the whole, what they say that we can bring the horse to water, but we can't make them drink. That's sort of the the argument that you hear from a lot of marketing and people, right? But when the goals are aligned, monetary and revenue goals are aligned, then you can craft out a strategy, right? And so you can say, okay, well, what type of lead is more likely to close from a sales perspective, and how can we capitalize on that, right? And then continue to do that, and then how can we can make that more efficient, So it really isn't about separation. It's about unity. It's about alignment, and that comes from leadership. The role of the CEO is to provide that cohesive leadership to everybody in the organization, and to make sure that everybody in the organization feels part of that same journey, and that they feel that they're all responsible for the success or failure of said business, right? And so you have to look at it from that perspective. Well, how much is the CEO bringing these people together? How much is he making them feel that they both share the same mission? And when I say mission, I don't mean just something that's posted up on a wall or something that people recite every meeting, but rather it's like a fundamental objective that the business is trying to do outside of themselves. So it's not revenue focused. It's about making a deep and fundamental impact in the people that they work with, right? And so when you take that approach, there really isn't these issues about separation or anything like that, because everybody's under the impression that even though they perform different roles, they're all working for the same objective.
Yeah, so your answer is perfect on the spot and also a lot of philosophical element to it. So I really liked it. Now, the question that really startup founders or the SaaS companies have is, let's say one is the short-term plan. When you're launching a new brand, you want to have a perfect short-term plan for growth, and then also you want to align your long-term objective when it comes to performance marketing. How do you really uh, do those alignments? And when you're building a roadmap, what are the important factors that they should consider while working on it?
Well, I'll say this: there is really no perfect plan, right? Because if if you're doing your job correctly, that means that where you start is not going to be where you finish, and what idea you have of the objective or how you get there is going to have to change, right? So you may have a vision of where the company should go. You may have certain metrics that you can have a like your B hack, right? Your big audacious, your big hairy audacious goal, but how you get there is going to change a lot, and it's going to change based on what you're learning throughout the process. So it's really hard to say that, how do you develop the perfect roadmap to get there. What I would say is to have a general framework, but be flexible enough that if you have to change it based on what you're learning, you're able to do so. So take for example, right, you know how much money you're going to have available, and you know what objective you want to have, but that objective cannot be um, there has to be obviously your an objective that um, has some sense to it. So it can't just be an objective that you just randomly put up a number and say this is what I want to do, right? There has to be a way to get there, and that objective has to make sense. And so once you have that objective from a revenue perspective, and you know what percentage of the revenue should be coming directly from marketing, because then there's also companies that do that, right? So there's companies that are focused on outbound as much as they're focused on inbound. And so when you're as from a marketing standpoint, you look up the objective and say, okay, directly as an attribution of marketing, if we can attribute it, how much of that percentage should come from us versus how much percentage should come from outbound. And then once you have that percentage, then you break that percentage down based on the activities that you think are going to get you closer to that. So that could be email marketing, it could be paid advertisement, right? But if you're a startup that you're just starting out and you haven't done it before, right, then it becomes a lot trickier. So you have to try different things. You have to experiment as much as possible in the shortest amount of time by also saving budget to be able to identify what is that channel like, right? And so that's where you have to be very careful, but you also have to be very open to learning, to making mistakes, and to being wrong, right? So again, there's no perfect framework, but what there is an idea of how you get there once you have the objective, and then you start to make adjustments and changes based on what areas you're seeing success. That also is aligned with the budget that you have on what you're able to spend in marketing.
Awesome. So you talked about inbound and outbound marketing strategies, and
Hmm.
one of the important aspect of the SaaS product marketing that you are also bullish about from the beginning is the importance of product-led marketing or product-led
Hmm.
growth.
Hmm. Hmm.
How do you really define the product-led growth for my audience? Put up a simple definition as possible, and then what are the important elements when it comes to the product-led growth marketing strategies for a SaaS company?
Hmm. I mean, the way that I would describe it is a way by which you develop the product and how you marry that to market that helps build the business. And so it's not just about putting the product out there from a marketing perspective and optimizing for conversions, but it's also how do you build the product so that if you're giving it away for free in the initial stages, right, like the freemium model, you're able to convert those into paid users, not only by showing the value, but again, collaborating very closely between product and marketing to make sure that the product is designed in such a way that that conversion happens, right? And then obviously making all of the measurements and adjustments that you need to do so based on how many people you're able to shift from free to paid. Um, and so, from a product marketing standpoint, obviously, I mean, sorry, from a product led growth perspective, the marketing is crucial. Um, and and again, it goes back to the same question, right? How much well, let me ask you this actually before I continue. Are we referring to a company that already has product market fit, or are we referring to a company that's just starting out and they're trying to figure that out?
So I would love if you can give separate answer to both for both the companies. One is a startup that is trying to find the product market fit,
Okay,
and second is the company that already has a product market fit, that already has certain customers.
gotcha.
Now
Okay.
they both want to adopt a product led growth strategy.
Hmm.
What would be the roadmap for number one, which is the startup trying to find the ICP, trying to find the product market fit? Second is those who have already found the ICP, the product market fit, what should be the product led growth strategy for them?
Gotcha. Okay, so let's start with the first one, right? So, if they're trying to find product market fit, marketing is going to be the avenue by which they make the experiments necessary to find that product market fit, right? So it's going to be on the messaging, on the positioning, and seeing and measuring the conversions that they're having on their landing pages to be able to know what changes need to be made on the product side. But then also looking at the user activity in the product itself and understand what is the user journey and what are they engaging with, what parts of the software are they most likely to use. Can we send out surveys? Can we, just how finding all the ways in which you can extract the most amount of information and data so that you can and relevant data. So there's also that piece of the puzzle. It's not just about having a bunch of data, it's about having the relevant data that is going to help guide where that product should go so that you're able to really make a product that fits that audience, right? And so again, it's looking at the user data, it's looking at conversion data on your website and looking at all of these different things, identifying what is that north star for your business, right? So what is the most important metric to follow that is going to yield you the results that you're actually looking for. And so once you find that data point, is creating, again, the strategy around that. Now, if you are a company that already has product market fit, it's going to depend again. Well, how far along are you in, like, let's say, the awareness within your within your ICP, right? How many people know you? What do people say about you, right? And say let's say if in this particular instance people don't really know you, well, you want to invest in awareness. Now, investing in awareness doesn't mean you just put money out there for people to see you. It means that while you're also investing money in trying to get people to convert as a client, that in and of itself serves as the awareness purposes. I don't know if that makes sense, right? And so, um, at that particular stage, there's no trust between you and the audience. And so, what you have to do is you have to optimize for conversions, right? So, not only are you going to be putting the advertisement out there, but you're going to be able to, what you want to be able to do the most is to target the people that have engaged with your product in some shape or form, right? And so, if you're in that stage, you have to build out a and I don't want to use the word funnel, but you have to build out a logical step by which you filter out the right people that are going to be using your product, right? And that's also going to keep your costs low, and we can get into that conversation as well. So I know I've been rambling quite a bit. I don't know if that if I kind of answered your question or if you need more detail.
No, it does. It does put a perspective when it comes to putting up the product-led growth strategy in place. Now, the another important aspect is identifying the channels. So, when it comes to performance marketing, you focus more on the Meta, Google, LinkedIn. Maybe these are the most
Hmm.
important paid channels. You can also
Sure.
look at YouTube as a separate channel if you have to. But what is the channel mix that you usually go with when you have no experience or no understanding of the target market? Where do you actually start? And when you actually identified your ICP, do you really look out for only channel which are working for you, and you don't not at all experiment with the channels that have not initially supported you?
Uh, I mean, I'll say this. I'll try to answer it, but just take into consideration that it varies so much business by business, right? So some businesses say maybe Facebook, right? Especially, I mean, one thing that I will tell people is to stay away from LinkedIn, and the reason for that is because it's very expensive. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think the traditional Facebook, Meta, maybe TikTok, but again, it really depends. It really depends on where your audience may be. It depends on how much money you have. I mean, if you've got the money to burn it on LinkedIn, be my guest. But it really depends, right? If you have a database of people, maybe you have emails and you are able to email them. That's probably the easiest and cheapest way. Um, so it really depends. I love email marketing. I think it works. Um, I think for B2B software, Facebook is not always the best choice, but it could be. Um, I would say, I mean, it's because it's just there's just so many different things. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I think if you need to save the money, probably email, and if you can give them a way to engage with your brand in some way. But again, that's going to depend on the type of business. So if we're talking about a B2C business, maybe Facebook is the way. But if you're talking about like a B2B business where maybe you want to engage with a particular stakeholder and maybe you want to invite them onto like a webinar that you put together and you want to invite them through email, right? And so that allows you to join. So again, it really depends on so many factors. But me personally, I would say email marketing, event marketing, um, and if I could afford it, LinkedIn. But again, if you that's a big if.
Yeah, true. And now the other aspect of choosing the channel and also deciding which channel is really working for me or not is the part that we call attribution, and it's
Hmm.
becoming challenging every day. I mean, both Meta and Google are kind of becoming the black box, and in
Hmm.
a way, we are going back to the days when we used to do TV advertising,
Hmm.
because we can't see where what is working and where is it working.
Sure.
So, if that is going to happen, and if attribution is going to be a challenge, how do you come up with an attribution stack that really justifies your marketing investment for each channel? And then there's a lot of conflict when it comes to attribution. So how do you rely
Yeah.
which tool is giving you the right data?
I mean, there's a couple of softwares that do that that can help you with that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but here's the way you're never gonna get it wrong. If you create content for that particular audience, then you'll find them. And at that point, I don't know if it really matters as much. So what I mean by that is I would probably, let's say at a point where let's play as hypothetical. You're no longer able to see any attribution data from any of these major sources. Do you want to be able to still advertise on them? Sure, maybe.
Of
Um,
course.
I would probably do it with the understanding that you may not be able to measure that really well. Um, However, what I would do in that particular case is focus on building my own online real estate. And so, what I would do is focus on building my website, focus on a really strong SEO strategy, focus on really strong social media content, and continue to produce that. um, because I'm not a fan of the whole pay to play model anyway. And so for me, my recommendation would be just stop using it if you can. Really focus on building a relationship with your target audience through content, whether that's podcasting, whether that's short form videos, or with SEO and blogging, and really bringing the right people onto your website. I think that's probably the best way to go right now, because and this is another thing to consider. If you can't tell attribution, but the cost per click or the cost per impression is going to continue to go up, does it even make sense to do it anymore? You know?
True. And the other aspect, which is also very important when it comes to marketing and when it comes to SaaS, at least for the SaaS or B2B product, is thought leadership. I think thought leadership as a topic is not really understood by many SaaS founders.
Hmm.
They think thought leadership is my personal branding. I can go ahead and talk on certain conferences, and that would build my thought leadership. In a way,
Sure.
that might help. But is that the thought leadership that really means when it comes to customer trusting you? Or what are the elements of thought leadership that SaaS founders should be aware of and working on it?
Well, I really don't like the term. It gets thrown around a lot. Everybody's a God. Can I curse on your show, by the way?
You
No.
can. I'll just
All
cut
right.
that out.
All right, no worries. So I mean, everybody's like is a damn thought leader, right? Like everybody's a thought leader, especially on LinkedIn. By the way, I'll say this: I don't like LinkedIn. I don't like the culture on LinkedIn. I don't like the content on LinkedIn. It's boring. It's behind, um, and it really doesn't really engage people as much as they think they do. And everybody just says the same thing over and over and over again. So I'll just put that out there, for whoever's listening. But um, I think that thought leadership is again been overused, and I don't think people really knows what it's supposed to mean. The whole point of thought leadership is not about positioning you. It's not about you. And this is what I don't like about that whole concept. It's always about them, about their company, about their personal brand. True thought leadership is where you produce content that is very authoritative, that is very in depth, that is very well researched for the benefit of the people that you want to help. It's a very important distinction, right? That content should be made so that your audience, so that your clients could engage with your brand and get help from your brand even before they engage with you as a client. That's the purpose of it. Because what you want to do from a psychological perspective is you want to trigger something that's called the reciprocity principle, which essentially means that if you do something for somebody, that person is a lot more likely to do something for you in return. Now, that's not why you do it in the first place. You can even take a spiritual perspective from it, right? And the spiritual perspective from it would be the more you give, the more you get, right? And so that's the real purpose of that. And that's the real purpose of a brand. See, the purpose of a brand is to tell a story, but not, and this is like 99.9 of people that are brand builders are going to say, how do I build your brand? No. Your brand is there to tell the story not of your company, but to tell the story of the people that you're serving. And serving is a big, big word. Serving, right? And so you as the server understand that you're not the main character. You as the thought leader, you understand you're not the main character, because there's also another word in there that's called leader. A leader is never the main character of the narrative. The leader makes sure that everybody else is the main character, because guess what? In their mind, in your mind right now, you're your main character. In my mind right now, I'm my main character. And the brand is able to understand that and communicate that to me in a way that positions me as the leader of that story that they're telling. That's the brand that I'm going to purchase from, right? This is why we see the same archetypical narrative being told over and over and over and over and over again, because it has psychological implications that talk to us at a deeper, fundamental level of human existence, right? And so, thought leadership, going back to your initial question, is all about that. How much knowledge can I really give to people so they become more educated buyers and they can make the best decision, whether or not, and this is a big one, whether or not they buy my product or service. right? So I'm providing this information to somebody to really genuinely help them. And I'm not going and you cannot quantify that. You cannot look at that only through dollars and cents. That's what that goes back to the mission. If your true mission in your business is to help the people that you want to help, that's how you do it. And so you cannot be focusing on how much money you're going to make from it. You will make money eventually, and you'll make a shit ton more money. Sorry, a lot more money, right? You'll make a lot more money, even though it may take a little longer, but that's the irony. The more you want to make the money in the quickest way possible, the more you scare away your client. The more that that person feels that they can go to you as a resource, the more they're going to buy.
True. That's so true. And that's so fundamental when it comes to thought leadership. And thank you so much for clarifying this for my audience. Now, the other important aspect, and often the point of conflict when it comes to SaaS product marketing, is something called MQL and SQL. It's often,
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's a lot of fight around that. And there's no clear definition when it comes to what is an MQL when it comes to marketing. We want the easiest way out as marketers, but sales team is always behind us, marking them as invalid leads. How do you really come up with an understanding that what is your experience with that?
Well, this is why I'm so glad I left the corporate world because it's extremely childish. And this is a very good example of how childish it really is because they get so focused on the labels and they forget to ask the question, why is the label even there in the first place? The reason why the label is there is so that you're able to identify what people your sales should be spending more time on and what people your marketing should be spending more time on. That's all. That's what the labels are there. So a marketing qualified lead is not something that you've done to say, oh, we got all these leads. That doesn't matter. It's to say, okay, there's all of these individuals that have shown a level of interest in what we do, right? And the MQL and lead scoring model is built to be able to quantify that interest to make it easier to know what people you can go after. And therefore, you can build a system and an automation around what people are more important versus not. And that's only a problem that you're going to have when you have when you have an overabundance of leads. And with an overabundance of leads, like with anything else, you have to be able to really refocus the time that your salespeople are going to spend chasing these folks, right? And again, that only comes with an overabundance of leads. And it's just a systematic way to route them in the right direction, right? That's the purpose of that. Nothing else. An MQL is just a label, nothing else.
Great. I hope the salespeople are able to understand this fundamental, and it makes life of marketers much easy. Now, the last and final question of today's episode is, let's say you have to advise somebody who is a SaaS founder and just getting started with performance marketing.
Mhm.
What would be your advice, like in the simplest format, not to anybody who's not so experienced?
Well, as a business owner myself, um, I would always, I mean, again, and it's really hard to give advice because this type of advice really has to be catered to the individual. Um, what I would say is, depending on where they are in their business, to invest their marketing money in at the beginning in the thing that they know is going to give them the best ROI. And that could be anything. That could be anything. That could be email marketing, that could be events, and maybe to run some experiments, to see where there may be um, clues as to what that channel is. There really
Yeah.
is no. It's really hard to say unless you have evidence to support it. That's the catch 22 here, right? It's like I want to invest in marketing, but I don't have any data to know where I should invest. And in order for me to make the best investment, I need the data. So it really becomes difficult. The other thing I would say is to really focus on who they're servicing. and to make sure that whatever they do, whether it's marketing, sales, whatever, that they're doing it with that intention of really genuinely helping those people, and to take the same approach with their marketing. So you shouldn't just do an advertisement because you want people to know about your product, because the likelihood that somebody that sees an advertisement from you when they've never heard about you, when you're a startup, and them to actually engage with that is very unlikely. And it's going to take a lot of money so that people get exposed to your product enough times for them to make a buying decision. So there's that, right? And so as an early stage startup, focus on building that trust. It doesn't have to, you don't have to reach 1 million people. Reach 1,000, but reach 1,000 people that are very, very much in your ICP, and build that trust in any way that you can, whether it's providing, information through the form of webinars, whether it's to you personally as the founder to do as much networking as you possibly can. Do that. Um, and I mean, again, it's hard to give advice when it's so general, but I think that's probably the best thing that I could tell you.
Great. Anything else you want to share before we close?
Uh yeah, just one thing. And it goes back to, again, to the corporate lingo. Okay. What I would say to anybody that's watching this is, don't get lost in how things sound. Don't get lost or don't focus on the appearance of success, but actual success. I think that everybody, especially corporate marketers, are famous for talking great, but not really neither not knowing what they're talking about, or using a lot of words to explain a very simple concept, right? Focus on actual success, not the appearance of success. Don't worry about the labels. Don't worry about being overly careful with your speech or with the way that you behave. Really good business decisions are made when people speak their mind and when people come together and find out a solution to a problem. That's what marketing is there for. Marketing is a way to solve a problem, and it's a problem of people knowing who that business is and what it does and what it stands for. Focus on how do you solve for that problem in the overarching objective that is the business. And that's what I would like to leave people with. Just drop the BS.
Great. So drop the BS. That's the message from Rafael. And thank you so much for joining, guys. And it was really lovely talking to you, Rafael, today.
Likewise.
And yeah, just one appeal I want to make, and it's a no BS appeal, of course. Make sure you subscribe to the 10x Marketer podcast wherever you're listening from. We are available on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube channel. Thank you so much for listening so far. And Rafael, it was really great having you. I just loved chatting with you, and you are such a open-minded and funny guy. So
Thank you. It was a
really love
pleasure.
talking
Thank
to
you.
you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.